ocean research.
The Ocean Life Symposium is brought to you by Mindanoma Whale and Seal Studies, Scott and Tree Mercer. Watch it on YouTube or listen in at 88.3 FM or online at kgua.org. Good morning and welcome to Peggy's Place. This is KGUA in Wallala 88.3 FM. I'm Leanne Lindsay along with George Callis here today. I'm going to make a few announcements and then George is going to take it over, be the host today. He's going to be speaking with photographer and sea rancher Arthur Drooker. That's coming up in just a few minutes. First, we do have some announcements, George. I just want to say that I am so excited about our Ocean Life Symposium next week. We are live on YouTube right now, so you can join us. You can watch us here today, and you can watch us all next week for the Ocean Life Symposium.
How many speakers is that, Leanne?
We have 19 speakers plus Cotton Tree as well, who are the co-producers, and they'll be with us all week long.
And that's like 16 hours of programming next week, isn't it?
It is 3 hours every day, 5 days a week, 9 a.m. to noon Pacific, and it will be on YouTube Live, as well as it will remain on YouTube for people to watch later, and it will also be uploaded to SoundCloud as audio files for listening anytime.
I'm sure you'll agree, Leanne. Be there or be square.
You said it. And just now, if you would like to look at the schedule, you can actually go to our website, click on schedule. It will bring up our automated schedule that's going to show you the speakers for each day. You can click on the link. You can find out more about their title of their presentation, what their background is. They're from all across the country. It's going to be an amazing, amazing program. And it is the 3rd annual Ocean Life Symposium. This is the 2nd time that we are doing it on air and on YouTube. This is how we actually started going to YouTube with our morning show. Was last year. Scott and Tree said, I think Zoom can also go to live YouTube. So light went off up here and I went, okay, we can have a little TV channel for our radio station. And just the other day, in fact, Christina Jatan was stopped on the trail and somebody said, I know you. I saw you on radio. So there you go. Anyway, so there's a quick look at our Ocean Life Symposium that you can look at. It's going to be a fabulous one next week, but we've got other announcements to make here too. Coming up, as you heard from the Halloween spot that Paul and I produced yesterday for the Sea Ranch Lodge, they're going to have a masquerade ball on October 30th. And also Wallala Arts has a drive-through trick or treat, and that's going to be October the 27th. And that's 3:30 to 5:30 p.m. And it's their 2nd annual drive-through trick or treat. And again, they've made it a competition with a cash prize. You can call Kendra at Wallala Arts for more information or email her. The telephone number is 884-1138. That's 884-1138, or email info@wallalaarts.org. Here it is, beautiful flyer that they gave to us. And just a quick look at their Halloween decorating competition application. The form is due, let's see, October the 20th. What is today's date? So maybe you can still get your registration form.
Actually, I think
it's the 22nd.
I think they extended it.
They did.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So check in with the front desk to find out your designated area. Setup is 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. on October 27th, and breakdown is 5:30 to 7 p.m. on October 27th. And all decorations will be displayed as part of the Halloween drive-through. Sounds fun. Now moving over to vaccinations and COVID testing. We do have this great new mobile bus that is traveling to our coast, thanks to the Mendocino County Health Department, as well as OptumServe. They are going to be up in Point Arena today from 9 to 11:30 a.m. at City Hall. And then they are going to be here in Wallala at the Community Center from 2 to 5 p.m. That is today here in Wallala at the Community Center, and that's the COVID bus. So take a look for that. RCMS continues to do the flu shots and COVID shots and boosters. And as we heard today, They're authorizing the Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccinations as boosters for a select group. So contact RCMS, contact your doctor to see if you can get that booster. And they're going to be open from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. today. Walk in, no appointment is necessary. Just remember to bring your vaccination card. And so that's very, very important. Right up here above us in the Cypress Village on Ocean Drive, that's RCMS. And next week on Thursday, October the 28th, from 5 to 6:30 p.m., a virtual event. This is about fire prevention. Well, we do have a lot of rain right now, which is fabulous. And I heard we might even get up to like 5 inches to more.
The atmospheric river is coming.
Over Sunday is going to be the biggest day, batten down those hatches. But anyway, this is about fire prevention because we are going to be living with it for quite some time. And so there is going to be a preparedness and post-fire resources that's going to be on this Zoom event that is brought to you by Mendonoma Health Alliance. And you can contact MendonOmaHealthAlliance.org or call them to find out more information. It's sponsored by the Sea Ranch Association and also RCMS, the South Coast Fire Department District, North Sonoma Coast Fire, and more. So that's Thursday, October the 28th, and that's 5 to 6:30 p.m. We have the farmers markets today up in Point Arena, 3 to 6 p.m. That's in the general store parking lot. In Point Arena, we have hours tomorrow here in Wallala from 9:30 to 12:30. I don't know how much longer the community farmers market is going to go. And if it rains, what happens? Oh, and there is a big event at Stewart's Point, come rain or shine, and that's the Fall Festival featuring a pumpkin patch, crafts, food, and hay rides. That's tomorrow, Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the landing at Stewart's Point. It is free, so you're welcome to go. There's an art exhibit and the watercolor works of Lloyd Marsh. The exhibit opens at Linden Design Gallery up in the Sea Ranch. And I want to give them a shout out too, because they're one of the sponsors of the Ocean Life Symposium. And some of the other sponsors are the Sea Ranch Lodge and the Sea Ranch Supply, Building Supply, that's Stacy Aitchison, and CNA Metalworks with Chris Aitchison, and then also Lisberg and Associate Realtors up in the Sea Ranch. Thank you all so much for being sponsors of the Ocean Life Symposium. But going back to Linda Design Gallery, they have their exhibit open from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And that is up on Annapolis Road, right next to the wine shop, Wendy's Wine Shop. Great combo, art and wine right there on Saturday. And it goes through October the 30th, so next weekend, Saturday. And Lou and Maynard are always happy to open up the store for you as well at any time. Just contact them at lyndendesign@me.com. That's LYNDON design@me.com, or Lou Linden, and that's LULYNDON@me.com. Music at Annapolis Winery, just further on up Annapolis Road. Jim and Sharon Lieberman, Bards of a Feather, sing and play guitar, mandolin, and fiddle, playing a range of singer-songwriter tunes. That's going to be 1 to 4:30 p.m. this time, longer time, this time at Annapolis Winery. And one last thing that I missed here at 10 o'clock up in Point Arena at the Arena Theater, the Met Opera live in HD. And it's going to be Terrence Blanchard's Fire Shut Up in My Bones. So that is going to be 10 a.m. Doors open 9:15 a.m. George, that's going to do it for all of our announcements. So many things happening.
There's a lot going on, isn't there? Fantastic. We're lucky to get to live in an area with so many things happening that we can take advantage of. Well,
Absolutely.
Welcome. Yeah, welcome. Thank you, Leanne.
I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you, everybody. And this is going to be a great show with our host, George Callis and Arthur Drooker. I'm Leanne Lindsay. Thank you.
Thanks. Welcome to Peggy's Place. I'm George Callis. I'll be your host today. And we're really fortunate today to have someone who's become one of my favorite photographers. He doesn't know that yet, but I'm letting him know right now. In an area that's just blessed with great photographers, the Sea Ranch and the whole Mendonoma coast, many fine photographers here. But we're going to explore a little bit with Arthur. Arthur, you can go ahead and unmute yourself there, and we'll dive right in.
Okay, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
No, I'm not getting you, Arthur.
Oh, I
Audio.
can you hear me now?
Well,
Hello?
we'll keep on talking here. We're not getting Arthur's audio,
Can you hear me? Hello?
but
Hello? Can you hear me?
Now.
Hello?
there you go.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Well, one of the things with public radio is you get a lot of free help to run these shows and everything, and that was a matter of moving a slide switch up, which I didn't know how to do. Now I do.
All right.
Anyway, good morning, Arthur. Happy to
Good
have you.
morning.
Yeah, the problem was on our end. Arthur, I first became aware of some of your photography work, I think through social media, where you had put some of your images and photos and so forth, and then we got in touch. I'd like to start off by talking about your current project, which you call Light on the Land.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about Light on the Land.
Light on the Land started at the end of last year. My wife and I, we have a house here at Sea Ranch, and we started coming up on the weekends, especially when lockdown happened. And like a lot of people at Sea Ranch, we would go on the trails and hike around and explore. And one day we were on a trail near the bluffs, and there were these shafts of light coming through a particular tree. And I wouldn't say I'm the most religiously observant person, but it was like a religious moment to me. It was very spiritual with these shafts of light. I know we're going to see that eventually, but that was quite frankly my big aha moment about photographing at the Sea Ranch. And that was the moment that started the Light on the Land series. And the funny thing is, I consider myself a city boy, and I like photographing architecture and things in a city. So the idea of photographing out in nature was a bit alien to me. But it was wonderful to have that moment. And that moment inspired me to pick up my camera and start exploring the trails of Sea Ranch with my camera. And then I started seeing all kinds of things. And that led to the series.
Let's take a look at that. Let me see if I can share that image with our viewers. And there we go.
There it is.
There it is. Hopefully your viewers. So Arthur, we've got listeners on the radio who can't see this. So these rays of light and this intense spiritual experience that you're having. Talk about this picture and describe it a little bit for those who are just on the radio.
Sure. For those on the radio, and by the way, if if you can watch on YouTube, I encourage you to do so. But if you're listening on the radio, what we are seeing are shafts of light coming through these tree branches, and it's basically on the left half of the frame, and the right half is a little darker with all these other branches. So it looks to me like something out of a myth or something out of a fairy tale. And as I mentioned earlier, when I saw this, it literally stopped me in my tracks. This could not be ignored. And I did not have my camera with me, but I took note of the time. I think I had my iPhone with me, so I took a shot of it, and it timestamps it. So I came back the exact same time the next day, and I made this photograph at that time. And it just was to use a religious word, it was a revelation to me. And I went from a guy that photographed mainly things one would find in a city to all of a sudden I started seeing things, walking the trails, hiking the trails of Sea Ranch. And that led to the creation of Light on the Land. And Light on the Land, obviously it's somewhat literal looking at this image, but I remember my wife telling me about the design philosophy of the Sea Ranch, and she used the term light on the land, which I later found out was more lightly on the land, but I thought it was close enough. But anyway, I thought as a photographer, light on the land at Sea Ranch took on a double meaning: the design philosophy as well as the way light plays here at the Sea Ranch on the Northern California coast.
Yeah, that phrase is one it's been around since the 60s, the living lightly on the land, which became one of the phrases associated with the Sea Ranch. So I love the interplay of words. Yours is light on the land. So not only are we light in our weight, but the light itself, as we saw in this photograph,
right? And
something you're exploring.
And I mentioned in my introduction to the book that's going to be coming out in December, Light on the Land, that I say, in a sense, lightly on the land made light on the land possible. Because without that design philosophy, who knows what would have happened to this area.
You might not have, this wouldn't have occurred. You might not be photographing these things.
Right, exactly.
That non-existent. Let's talk a little bit more. We're going to go to some other images, which our viewers will see. You've chosen to do this project, Light on the Land, all in black and white. Talk
Correct.
about that a little bit.
Well, there's such a timeless quality to what goes on here, the kind of things we're seeing, whether it's the shafts of light coming through tree branches or these wonderful waves crashing on rocks and the taphony and erosion formations that result from that. These are timeless processes. And in photography, black and white is usually considered somewhat of it gives things a timeless quality. So I thought Lightly on the Land or Light on the Land should be in black and white. And so that's why I chose it. It's pretty simple.
Talk a little bit, we've talked in the past, and you made a comment that I found very interesting, was that sometimes in color, when you're doing color photography, sometimes the color becomes a distraction to the viewer or the photographer or everyone, that black and white somehow eliminates some of those distractions, or color is no longer the issue. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yes, well, that is, a lot of photographers will say what you just said, that if an image is really about light and dark and design and shape and form, these really basic elements of picture making, then black and white typically, I mean, there are always exceptions, but typically black and white would be the way to go because it focuses the viewer's eye on those elements, especially, as an example, the photograph we're looking at now, which is the interior of the barn just below the lodge. It's a morning shot, and the rising sun is coming through the wooden slats in the barn, kind of splintering the light, and you're seeing these wonderful shadow patterns of light and dark on the ground. And in color, quite honestly, this would not be as strong as it is in black and white. And I think this photograph is a good example or a good argument for why photographers photograph in black and white.
Yeah, this photograph is intriguing, particularly, I think, because it's black and white, but it evokes for me, maybe not everyone has done this, but anyone who's laid down in a pile of hay in the barn and fallen asleep, I can almost imagine that I'd fallen asleep somewhere here in this barn, and then at sunrise, I was awoken, and here's the light streaming in, and maybe I'm a little bit groggy, and maybe my eyes aren't even working in color because it's too early in the morning. But it's captured just a wonderful feeling here.
Thank you. And by the way, last weekend I was out on the bluffs not far from here, and there was some signage, and I found out for the first time that this barn was a livery stable for what used to be the Black Point Hotel in the late 19th century.
Yes.
So
this is about the only structure that's left from that particular usage of the barn. Now, there are some other structures, but yeah, fascinating history.
Right.
Great history. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some of those who influenced you in photography. a couple of, particularly here in California and on the coast, and thinking about the Sea Ranch, there's several names that pop up. Obviously, on everyone's list, Ansel Adams, the great master of black and white and capturing landscapes all over California. We've also, I'm kind of reminded from some of your other shots, Julius Schulman, of course, who photographed so many wonderful Southern California, known as a great residential photographer. So many architects found notoriety through his photography. Locally here, some listeners may remember Merg Ross, who took many photographs on the Sea Ranch. Or out of those and others, who else influenced you as a photographer?
Well, when I first picked up a camera when I was a teenager, I would say the photographer who really made the biggest impact on me among other photographers was Walker Evans.
Sure.
His photography really hit me in the gut, hit me between the eyes, the whole thing. To those who are not familiar with Walker Evans, when you see some of the classic black and white photography documenting the Great Depression in the United States, there's a good chance that he made that photograph. He wasn't the only one. Dorothea Lange made some wonderful photographs. Arnold Rothstein made some other photographs. There were some others who worked for the Farm Security Administration documenting what was going on in the US during the Great Depression. But Walker Evans, there was something about the way he photographed. It was his selection of subject matter, which we kind of take for granted now, but he was the first one, or one of the first to do it. Really documenting the landscape, the built environment, to express how people were living, and making everyday objects seem very important. And words can't really express, or my words can't really express how important he was to me, but if anything I'm saying registers with anybody out there, I really encourage you to just, Google Walker Evans images, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So when I was 15, 16 years old, his photography probably had the biggest impact on me, followed closely by Robert Frank. His book, The Americans, influenced a lot of photographers in my generation. Again, his documenting of, going out on the road. That's the other thing with Walker Evans too. The idea of picking up a camera, traveling the country, documenting people and places. For a 16 or 17-year-old, this was like, wow, you can actually do something like this. And that really stayed with me. It really did. And to this day. So, yeah.
Fantastic. For those who are just tuning in, you're listening to Peggy's Place. I'm George Callis. Our guest today is Arthur Drooker, photographer, I will say on the Sea Ranch, but I think photographer of a lot of other places, and we'll get to some of that in a bit. Arthur, tell me, you've alluded to this a little bit earlier, but you've got a book coming out based on the project Light on the Land. Give us a few details about that book, when we'll see it, who's publishing it, and how's it coming?
Okay. Light on the Land will be coming out in early December. I say that because we're going to have a book signing at the Sea Ranch Lodge on December 4th from 4 to 6 p.m. So I invite everyone to come. The book itself will be soft cover. It will contain 46 images, all taken at the Sea Ranch, all black and white. It's being printed by Brilliant Graphics, which prints art books. They're located outside of Philadelphia. They do spectacular work. The book will also feature a foreword by architect Obi Bowman, who has designed some of my favorite houses at the Sea Ranch. And he was gracious to make himself available to write the foreword. He wrote a wonderful foreword, so that's a real treat there. He also will be present at the book signing, so I'm delighted that he will be present. The book will be 11 inches high, 10 inches across. That photograph that we showed earlier, Tree of Light with the shafts of light coming through the tree branches, that will be the cover image. And that will be the only thing you see on the cover. There won't be any text. It's that image. So it's a really nice presentation on a coffee table.
There you go. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And that date again for our listeners, that's December the 4th at the Lodge in the evening hours.
4 to 6 p.m.
4 to 6. Your book will be there. I assume it'll be available for sale. And you'll be there to autograph it and chat with people. And O.B. Bowman, for a lot of folks who've been here for a long time, remember and know O.B. Bowman, and he's always a treat to spend some time with.
Okay.
Let's back up a little bit, Arthur. You weren't always a photographer. You referred to when you were 15 or 16, you began taking some pictures. But in terms of your professional career, you didn't start out as a photographer. Talk to us about what your beginnings were professionally.
Professionally, when I was in high school, in addition to photography, I was also very interested in filmmaking. And I aspired to be a film director. So after I graduated college, this was in the mid-70s, soon afterwards, I moved out to Los Angeles because that's where that's where you should be if you want to become a film director.
That's where Hollywood is.
That's where Hollywood is. But, there's a difference between dreams and reality. And once I got to Los Angeles and got, just enough of a taste of the filmmaking business, and let's face it, it is a business. Excuse me, becoming a film director was no longer a do or die ambition. Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, I was, and always have been, a big history buff. And long story short, I produced a lot of documentaries for the History Channel, and did that for quite a while, won some awards. It was a wonderful experience because as a history buff, the idea of being paid to travel around the country, interview historians, go to historic sites, and make documentaries about certain events, it was wonderful. It was great.
And this was in the early days of cable television, right? Cable television was just entering American homes, and we began to see an increase in the number of channels, like the History Channel was.
Channel and A&E, correct. And I did several A&E biographies. So I got to meet some pretty incredible. I mean, I got to meet people ranging from Johnny Cash to Norman Schwarzkopf. I mean, this is the kind of people I was coming into contact with. But as wonderful as that was, at a certain point, things changed both within the TV business and for myself. So around the time I turned 50, a couple of things started happening. One, in the TV business, A&E and the History Channel were starting to get way more into what people call reality TV.
Right.
And honestly, I wanted no part of it. I had no interest in it whatsoever. So as a result, job opportunities began to dwindle. The other thing was when I was turning 50, I think like a lot of people at, that kind of milestone birthday, you have this, what I would call an involuntary life review. Mm-hmm. And you sit yourself down, as I did. When I tell this to people, I say I was doing my version of Michael Corleone at the end of Godfather Part 2.
Yeah. What have I accomplished? What have I done?
Exactly. Michael was sitting in his garden in Lake Tahoe. And so I sat on my little deck in my house in Los Angeles and thinking, okay, the first 50 years went by awfully quick. What am I going to do with the next 50? And I had the added dimension of, at that point, both my parents had passed away. So the mortality was uppermost in my mind.
Yep. Yeah. And
so I figured, if I'm being honest, there's more time, behind me in the rearview mirror than what's ahead of me. So what can I do to make whatever time I have left really matter to me and what would make me the happiest? And working in TV, as great as it had been, didn't even make the list. But what shot to the top of the list was photography. So at that moment, and it was a moment, at that moment, I resolved to rededicate myself to photography, because prior to that, I was working in TV and squeezed my photography in between TV gigs whenever I could. So at that moment, I decided to literally do a 180 and would do my photography as much as I could and work only in TV as I needed to pay my bills. So I have to say, as a result, my income took a big hit, but I was never happier. I was never happier. And the tangible result, that was in 2004. So the tangible result of that resolve was my first book.
Right. American Ruins. I was going to ask you about that. Yeah. When was that published again?
This book was published in 2007 by Merrill. And that was a wonderful experience, because it was an opportunity I gave myself to use all of my talent, so I could call on the skills I had developed as a documentary producer, whether it was researching, interviewing, how to set up a shoot, all that sort of thing, and traveled around to more than 20 sites, historic ruins around the country, and photographed them, wrote the text. I was working with a book packager who was wonderful, and through his diligence, we got a wonderful publisher, Merrill, and the book came out in 2007, and I'm proud to say it did quite well.
So 3 years into this decision you made,
yes,
revelation, decision, epiphany, 3 years later, you had something to show for, and not that you didn't, but now you had something sizable to show for it, a book.
Yes, and I
book that was selling. Yeah.
And I was going to say, I dedicated the book to my parents,
Sure.
for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
So,
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
We're going to come back to some of your other books. I hope maybe you have some of them sitting nearby. We'll come back.
They're right there.
All right. I thought you might. We'll come back to that. Let's talk a little bit about we'll delve into your personal life a little bit, because this is kind of interesting. You're here at the Sea Ranch some portion of the time. I understand that you live in Mill Valley, but you were in LA.
Correct.
How did you migrate up here, and what were some interesting personal occurrences in your life that caused these changes?
I think I know what you're talking about.
Sure.
So I had moved out to Los Angeles from the East Coast in 1978. And as I mentioned earlier, my life in LA was winding down in the early 2000s. And so I was a divorced guy. And one night in 2009, I was surfing the internet and I was thinking, whatever happened to Ivy Ross? Now, Ivy Ross grew up from me she grew up 3 blocks from me in New York when I was growing up there as a teenager.
She's just this girl in the neighborhood or at school.
She was a neighborhood girl. She dated my best friend from high school. We used to go to her house after school and hang out and listen to rock and roll. And I always liked her. I mean, there was no weird triangular thing going on. But she was always nice. We always had a really good time. But then, graduated high school in the early 70s. We all went our separate ways. I still stayed in touch with my best friend, but I had no contact with Ivy. But in 2009, one evening, it just popped into my head, whatever happened to her? So I Googled her and saw that she was doing some interesting things. And I had recently joined Facebook at that point. Mm-hmm. So I said, maybe she's on Facebook. And sure enough, she was there. And after nearly 40 years of no contact, think about that, nearly 40 years of no contact, I contacted her via Facebook, and within an hour, she got back to me.
Amazing. And she remembered you too.
Yeah. So, oh my God, so nice to hear from you and this, and that. So I had mentioned, when she was in Mill Valley and I'm in Los Angeles, and I had said in the email, I said, look, my sister lives in Berkeley. Maybe the next time I come up to Northern California, if you're around, let's get together for a cup of coffee. So anyway, that led to some emails. And then we started talking on the phone every night for a couple of weeks, catching up.
It started to get serious, didn't
It
it?
started to get serious. And, I had been married and divorced. And I have to admit, getting married again was not high on my to-do list. So,
Yeah.
but maybe my subconscious was working there. Who knows? But anyway, so as a result, we spent a year going back and forth. I'd come up to Mill Valley for a weekend. The next weekend, she'd come down to LA. So that went on for a year. And, again, as my life in LA was winding down, the relationship was really ascending. And so after about a year, Ivy said to me something that I'll never forget, because it's something no one else ever said to me, which was, she said, do you realize the only time you ever get angry or upset is when you talk about what it's like to work in TV? She said, why don't you just let it go, move up here, and just do your photography and stop worrying? And I remember saying to myself, Arthur, you better listen to her. So I sold my house in LA, moved up to Mill Valley to Ivy, and we got married a year later. And this past June, we celebrated our 10th anniversary.
Congratulations. That's a great story. And,
I often say Facebook giveth and it taketh away.
yeah, that's true. That's true. In your case, you got a lot out of it.
Yes, correct.
You got out of the drudgery of what you had been doing in LA, and it was time to make that change. And you just needed Ivy to give you that nudge to kind of wake you up there.
Well, something, it really made me understand that whether we want to admit it or not, sometimes you need somebody else to give you permission.
Yeah, you do.
And
Absolutely.
she did,
Absolutely. For those of you who are just tuning in, this is Peggy's Place. I'm George Callis. Our guest today is Arthur Drooker, photographer. We've just been hearing a little bit about his personal and professional life, which are some fun stories. I'd like to move back to some of the images. We've shown folks a few here. I'm going to, if I can do this. Yeah. Here's one of my favorites. I think it's a great cover shot also, but there we go.
Oh. Okay.
Tell us the name of this image, because I like the name too.
Okay. The title of this image is View with a Room. And for those listening on the radio, it's a shot just before sunset. And this is our house at the Sea Ranch. And the funny thing was, and I have to say something about the house, just as a little bit of a backstory. Ivy had always wanted at some point in her life to live by the sea, live by water. So getting the house at Sea Ranch was all her doing. We went up here, we explored it. And long story short, she found this house and here we are. So our life at Sea Ranch, honestly, I owe it all to her. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And I dedicate Light on the Land, the book, to her, because without her, it would not have been possible. So, but anyway, here we are. Here's the shot. And like I said a moment ago, it was before sunset. But the funny thing was, and a lot of photographers will understand this, when a photographer's, out there in the world, you're always keeping an eye out for something that might be a photo. So when I made this photo, we had some friends over and we were out on the deck near where this is. And I remember we were talking and I kept looking over a friend's shoulder at what we are looking at now in this photograph, the sun almost setting and looking through the windows of the house out towards the water. And so I said, excuse me, I got to go get my camera. So I got my camera and made this photograph. And I have to say, I really like the mood of this photograph. And I think black and white, going back to our black and white versus color conversation, I think black and white enhances the mood. And for those familiar with Sea Ranch photography, it reminds me a little bit, after the fact, it reminded me a little bit of Morley Bear's photography.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because he made some wonderful photographs in the early days of the Sea Ranch, architectural, that still had a wonderful feeling for place. And I'd like to think that I captured some of that with this photograph as well. And by the way, thank you for putting it on the cover of the fall issue of Soundings.
Yeah, it's a cover photo, no question about it. I think one of what I like is that, of course, I like to play on words. A view with the room, which of course is a play on room with a view, because the photographer, the viewer, is standing outside the home, looking inside the home, and then again looking through another set of windows back to the exterior. So you've kind of got two exteriors and an interior shot wrapped into one photograph. So
right. And let's not forget the glass. That's the lens on the camera. So we're looking through like 1, 2, 3 layers of glass.
Yeah, quite a bit. Absolutely. Here's another fun one. Did that pop up? It sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's another interesting take. Speaking of glass, and once again the sense of place, because the ocean's there. But this one can kind of fool the viewer a little bit unless you're very familiar with this location. This is at the lodge. Talk about this image a little bit, Arthur.
Okay, this image is called Picture Window. And one of the wonderful things in general about photographing at the Sea Ranch is just stumbling on things. It's very rare that I will go out and think, okay, I need to take a photograph of this or something very specific today. I mean, sometimes that is the case, but a lot of the times it's just giving up to chance and let's see what might happen. And so, as you mentioned, this was taken at the wonderfully renovated, recently reopened lodge. I think we're all happy about that. And the photograph is outside the lodge, looking at the reflecting windows in the solarium portion of the lodge. And it was kind of funny in that I was walking down that plank, so to speak, out towards the bluff trail, thinking if I was going to take a photograph, it would happen somewhere further down the trail. But here it is at the beginning of my hike, and boom, there I see this wonderful reflection in the solarium windows of the lodge. And what I really like about this, and again, this is a bit of an echo for me as a history buff, is seeing the past and the present together in one image. So
because the barn is in the reflection and it's the old ancient 19th century.
Correct. So what you're seeing in the reflection, as George just said, is the barn that, if you remember the photograph earlier in our talk about the interior of the barn, here's the exterior, here's an exterior shot of it reflected in the window of the lodge today. And I just love how we're capturing past and present in one image in a very visual manner.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that. And noteworthy for those who are watching on here, the glass, the windows of the solarium, although you've captured the reflection, they're not reflective glass. You found the right time of day where you got a reflection.
Okay.
Slight reflection. I mean, but they're not mirrored glass like we think of.
Okay.
Just right mirror. Yeah. I think you caught it. I think you caught the light conditions just.
Well, it's a morning shot. That's
yeah. So it's working well. Here's another piece of architecture that I enjoy mainly because of the shapes and the forms. Tell us which building this is of, and what possessed you to capture these geometric forms?
Okay, this is I made this photograph at the Ullman Rec Center.
Yeah, the Olson Rec Center.
Olson Rec Center.
Yeah.
And to me, and for those who are listening in on radio, it's the play of light and shadows on the tall, I guess you might call it a wind baffle at the Olson Rec Center. I think it was meant to control wind, perhaps. And you see triangular shapes of light and shadow playing out on the wood surface of this wooden structure. And, let's face it, architecture is one of the main things that distinguishes the Sea Ranch. And when Ivy and I or myself would just walk by the Olson Rec Center, I was always captivated at different times of day by the play of light on the surface of this particular structure. So I would make a habit of walking by in the morning, late afternoon, midday, early afternoon, all times of day, just to see how these shadows played out. And I have to confess, I forgot exactly what time of day I took this, but it also depends on the time of year. But I just loved the play of light and shadow. So I called this photograph Rec Angles.
Yeah.
So,
For the rec center and the angles. Wonderful.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
One thing that to me distinguishes and this photograph from some of your others, although you've captured a piece of the architecture, a view of architectural elements, but unlike some of the earlier pictures, the landscape is not involved. We see the sky through it, which of course in black and white appears gray, but there's no landscape in this that immediately identifies this as being on the coast, or except for the choice of materials. This could have almost been anywhere, but once we look at the very weathered cedar boards, siding and everything, that begins to hint to us that it is the Sea Ranch, even though we can't see the ocean out there. It's a little bit different from your other architectural pieces.
Yes. But I felt that listen, there have been some wonderful books about the story of Sea Ranch and Sea Ranch architecture. I mean, Donald Linden and Jim Allender made a wonderful book. SF MoMA had a wonderful companion book for their exhibition about the Sea Ranch. So so basically, no one needs to do another book about Sea Ranch architecture.
Yeah.
But that said, if you're going to do a book about the Sea Ranch, I do think that not including some photographs of the architecture is almost dereliction of duty. So,
right. There it is. Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump to another one. This is also at the Olson Rec Center. Somebody's getting I'm guessing an early morning swim, but
correct. It's an early morning. And by the way, the photograph we just saw is the other side of this
structure. Yeah.
Looming structure that we're looking at,
which used to be what I would have called a play structure, a slide. That the inclined structure to the left there used to have a slide on it, and probably for liability purposes, the slide was dispensed with at some point. Don't know the history there, but here's this lone swimmer out there. And did you have to sit there from sunrise just hoping for a swimmer to show up, or were you just walking by?
This was one of the photographs where I knew in advance I wanted to make a photograph like this. I know I said earlier, when I'm hiking on the trails, I typically give myself up to chance, and whatever I see, I see. But on occasion, there are some locations where I go, I know there's a photograph in here somewhere. I just have to find it. Yeah. And this was such an example. So in this particular case, swimmers are swimming their laps. So I put my camera on a tripod and had it on motor drive. So as a swimmer came into the frame, I would just take multiple exposures and then later on pick the best one exposure that really had everything working in it. And this was one. I just love the angle of the swimmer's arm coming out of the water, and the fact that there's a shimmering pool of light around the swimmer himself there.
Yeah.
And it really helps create a nice light dark contrast between the swimmer and that lower left area of the frame versus this looming wooden structure that's dark because it's in shade. So I like the tension that's going on in this photograph.
Yeah, I love that lone swimmer, and there he is in the shadow of the giant wooden structure, and he's out there swimming away. Let's turn our attention for a second to something very different. This is no buildings here, and that's the ocean for sure. Talk to us about this one, Arthur.
Okay, I called this photograph Guardians. And again, for those listening on the radio, this photograph shows these erosion formations on the Bluff Trail, almost in opposition to these very fierce crashing waves. And I called this photograph Guardians because these almost gargoyle-like shaped formations of erosion formations appear to be guarding the coast against this seeming attack of waves.
Yeah, these formations appear almost ominous.
Yes.
Like they're ready to fend off the ocean. It looks like a battle's about to ensue between the rock formations and the ocean.
Right. That's why I call it the Guardians. Exactly. And it's funny because when people I know at the Sea Ranch have seen this image, they go, "Where is this?" And I'm surprised only because compared to them, I'm a relative newcomer to the Sea Ranch, but there's a point on the Bluff Trail. I can't pinpoint it exactly, unfortunately, but it's not at the extreme north end. It's a little south of there. But anyway, there's a little stretch there along the coast where the erosion I call it the erosion explosion, just because there's just a burst of erosion formations in this, I would say, quarter-mile stretch. And so again, this was one case where it's like, oh, this is going to be a photographic feast. But to me, the thing too is like, get the best image you can. It's not about quantity of images. It's about getting an image that really expresses the power of a place. And so I knew this might be really good as a morning shot because I could get these formations more or less silhouetted. And if you look closely, you can see some shafts of sunlight on the left side coming through there.
Yeah.
So that automatically is going to give anything more power when it's backlit in silhouette and you got a chance of some light shafts. But then the other thing I did, technique-wise, if you want to call it that, was I bracketed, which for those who are not familiar with photography, when you bracket, you do one exposure as is, one exposure maybe one stop up and one stop below. And then in Photoshop, you merge the three exposures to get the best of all the three exposures merged into one optimal exposure. So, and I was shooting at a pretty good shutter speed there. So that's how you get these frozen waves,
right? Almost
a mid-attack. And in fact, there's one shape of a wave that almost looks almost like a shark with its mouth wide open. I don't know if you see what I'm seeing, but it's just to the right of the rock. If you go, and circle that area a little higher up, and now to the left.
Oh.
Yeah, see in there. That to me is the shark's mouth.
Oh yeah, opening it right in there.
Above it is almost like the shark's nose or something.
Yeah.
So all three things: the early morning light, the backlit, the shafts of light, the three exposures. It's a way to help dramatize what's going on there. So
yeah, you may have
black and white, and in black and white, because this is an eternal process.
Yeah, exactly. This photograph may have use for, if you'll pardon the humor, may have use for future psychiatrists in place of the Rorschach test.
Yes, could be.
Which some of us know.
Yes.
We've got a few minutes left here, Arthur, and that was just a nice selection of photos there. The book has, I believe you said 46 photos. These are all included in the book, I believe.
Yes, correct.
And a whole host of other images.
Yes, and I was going to mention that if you liked what you've seen on the show, keep in mind that prints of these images will be at the Linden Design Gallery
right
on Saturday, November 6th and 13th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m.
And the Linden Design Gallery is at 1000 Annapolis Road, and Arthur will be part of their rotating series of artists, photographers, designers who come through there. So stop by. There's always a different artist or photographer, designer. They're usually in 2 weeks of exhibits. So and I assume you'll be there.
I will be there. So
to visit folks.
Please come by. Be nice to meet you all.
With about the last 60 seconds we've got, here's Light on the Land. The book will be coming out in December. What are you thinking about? What's your next project? Where are you going from here?
Well, Light on the Land is, it's in black and white. And simultaneously, I'm working on a series that's all about color, which is Twilight. Also, photographs made solely at the Sea Ranch at our house. And they look, I've been told by many people, they look like Rothko paintings.
Okay.
Wonderful transitions of yellows, oranges, reds, blues, that sort of thing. So it's much different than Light on the Land. So that's what I'm working on now.
Fantastic. So that'll be a venture back into color, and that'll be a lot of fun. Folks, we're about at the end of our time. This is Peggy's Place. I'm George Callis. We've been lucky enough to have Arthur Drooker, photographer, and we've shown you a nice selection of some of his black and white stuff. He'll be at the Linden Design Gallery in a couple weeks. He'll be signing his upcoming book, Light on the Land, at the Lodge in December. Arthur, I believe people can go to your website also arthurdrooker.com.
Correct.
You can get all this information and look at many of your photographs there and learn even more about you. Arthur, thanks so much for taking your time.
Thank you for having me. It was wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. This has been KGUA 88.3 FM here in Wallala. And we're going to turn it back over to Leanne, and we'll come on to soon. We're ready for Native America Calling. Thanks, everyone.
That is true. Thank you so much, Arthur. We love hearing this show. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, that's going to do it for Peggy's Place. I'm Leanne Lindsay. And also we have to thank a couple of people before we get into Native America Calling. And that is Diana over at Office Source. She has been a phenomenal resource for us, getting all of the materials printed for the Ocean Life Symposium and all the digital stuff that's now up on our website. We've got a brand new media kit. Check out kgua.org. And you can also save the AirPocket app to your digital device, your computer, and you can listen in all next week for the Ocean Life Symposium. And even after, if you can't make it next week, it will remain on YouTube as well as SoundCloud. So you will be able to hear it from wherever you are. So don't worry about that. And the other person I'd like to thank as well for getting some of the heat going for us here in the studios is Bill Vellatini of Vellatini Heating. He was here yesterday with all of us as we were practicing for the event. It was pretty chaotic yesterday, but a lot of fun, wasn't it, George?
It was great.
All right. Well, we are going to be getting into Native America Calling in just a moment. Coming up any second. Just for the next few seconds, I'll let you know that it is misty and foggy out there, and it looks like it'll stay that way all day today. The rain returns tomorrow, and it looks like we're going to get quite a bit, almost like 6 inches over the next few days, Saturday through Tuesday. We need this so much. And we are so happy to have the rain come back to our Northern California coast.
Absolutely. Bring it on. Bring
it on, but be prepared. All right. This is KGUA in Wallala 88.3 FM, streaming around the world at kgua.org and on apps Radio Garden and TuneIn. And we are going to go now to KUNM from Albuquerque, New Mexico for Native America Calling.